The camera opens on an old training hall, wooden floors worn smooth by decades of footwork. Sunlight cuts through dust in the air. You hear slow breathing, the soft slap of bare feet on wood, the sound of knuckles meeting a heavy bag. A calm voice begins. There is a story martial artists whisper about, not because it is secret, but because it is uncomfortable. A story about pride, tradition, and a lesson learned the hard way. It begins, like many things do, with laughter. In the late 1990s, a respected Chinese kung fu master traveled through Southeast Asia. He was not a fraud, not a showman. He had trained since childhood, won regional competitions, taught hundreds of students. His movements were precise, beautiful, disciplined. In his mind, kung fu was complete. Refined by centuries, tested by dynasties, preserved through sacrifice. When someone mentioned Filipino martial arts, he smiled. "Stick fighting?" he said. "Village fighting. Useful for brawls, maybe, but not real martial art." The people around him laughed politely. What he did not know was that the men standing quietly near the wall did not laugh. Filipino martial arts, known as Arnis, Eskrima, or Kali, depending on the region, rarely announces itself loudly. It does not demand admiration. It waits. The master had been invited to a cultural exchange seminar. Demonstrations, friendly discussions, mutual respect. At least, that was the idea. He demonstrated forms, long flowing sequences of strikes and stances. The audience applauded. His control was undeniable. Then he watched the Filipino practitioners. No robes, no long forms, just sticks, blades, and movement. They moved fast. Too fast, in his opinion. No deep stances, no dramatic pauses, just angles, steps, and short, sharp strikes. He leaned toward a colleague and chuckled. "If this is real fighting," he said, "then children could learn it in a week." One of the Filipino instructors heard him. He did not react. He simply nodded. Later that evening, over shared food and tea, the conversation returned to martial philosophy. The Kung Fu master spoke about balance, internal energy, centuries of refinement. Then he said it openly. Filipino systems rely on weapons because they lack empty-hand depth. Once the stick is gone, there is nothing. The room went quiet. An older Filipino man, his hair already gray, spoke gently. "In our systems," he said, "the weapon is never gone." The master smiled again, confident, amused. "What do you mean?" The old man tapped his chest, then his head. "The weapon becomes you." The master laughed, not cruelly, but dismissively. The next morning, someone suggested a friendly sparring session. No winners, no audience pressure, just movement. The Kung Fu master agreed. He had nothing to prove, but everything to demonstrate. They began with sticks. The master assumed this would be simple. He had trained with weapons before: staff, spear, saber. A stick was just a short staff. The moment they engaged, his smile faded. The Filipino practitioner did not meet force with force. He cut angles. He attacked the hand, not the stick. The wrist burned. The knuckles stung. Before the master could settle into a stance, the distance collapsed. Tap, tap, tap. Clean hits, not hard, but undeniable. They stopped. The master adjusted his grip. Again. This time he moved faster, more aggressively. The Filipino fighter stepped in, not back. The stick checked the arm. The other hand controlled the elbow. A strike landed on the ribs. If it had been steel instead of rattan, the fight would have ended there. They stopped again. The master frowned. "Empty hand," he said. "Let us remove the weapons." The Filipino nodded. They squared off. The kung fu master took a familiar stance. Rooted, balanced, powerful. The Filipino stood relaxed, hands open, weight light. When the master attacked, it was clean and sharp, a combination he had used for years. The Filipino did not block. He crashed the distance. Elbow, head control, off balance. The master felt the floor rush toward him. They froze mid-motion, the Filipino holding him just enough to show where the fall would happen. Silence. The master stepped back, breathing heavier now. "What was that?" he asked. The Filipino replied calmly, "The stick never left." The master insisted on another round. Pride demanded it. This time, the Filipino explained nothing. He just moved. Every strike became a grab. Every grab became a hit. Every hit flowed into something else. No pause, no reset. The master tried to disengage. The Filipino followed. In less than 30 seconds, the master found himself controlled again, unable to strike without exposing himself. They stopped. No one clapped. No one spoke. The master bowed slightly, more out of habit than understanding. He left early that day. For weeks afterward, he could not let it go. He replayed the movements in his mind, the lack of form, the absence of ritual. And yet, it worked. He returned home and began researching. Spanish colonization, banned weapons, training disguised as dance. Real combat, not sport. Survival, not performance. He realized something unsettling. Kung Fu had evolved in periods of stability, temples, schools, and long-term students. Filipino martial arts evolved in chaos, in ambushes, in jungles, in villages burned overnight. There was no time for perfection, only effectiveness. Months later, the master returned to the Philippines quietly. No seminar, no audience. He sought out the old man. "I want to learn," he said. The old man studied him for a long moment. "Puitu." The master answered honestly, "Because what I know is beautiful, but what you know is dangerous." Training began at sunrise. No forms, just drills. Repetition. Pain. The master's wrists bruised. His forearms hardened. His ego cracked. He learned to attack first, to finish quickly, to assume weapons were always present. Most difficult of all, he learned to abandon control. Filipino martial arts did not promise safety. It promised survival. Months passed. When the master returned home again, his students noticed changes. His movements were tighter, his distance sharper, his sparring ruthless in its efficiency. He no longer mocked other systems. When asked about Filipino martial arts, he said only this: "I laughed because I did not understand. That laughter almost made me blind." Years later, he would tell his advanced students a story. Never confuse simplicity with weakness, and never assume a man who carries a stick does not know how to use his hands. The camera returns to the empty training hall. The voice concludes softly. Martial arts are not just about tradition. They are about truth. And sometimes, the most unexpected lessons come from the systems we are too proud to respect. Fade to black.